Good. All right. All right. Well, welcome everyone.
Change the spot tonight.
Tonight is Thursday, July 7th, 2022. It's 5:30 p.m. It is our July work session for Waseca Public Schools School Board, and we are in the Central Building second floor conference room. So the agenda should be on the website. We have 3 items: staff spotlight, facilities update, and then superintendent and board goals kind of update. So I will turn it over to Eric.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Continuing our cycle of staff spotlight, hearing from all of our staff throughout the district, but also now as the year ends, kind of getting into the summer, hearing from our administrators about how the year ended in their buildings, and then both John and Ben with their sites have also had their summer programming as well for their students as well at their buildings. So I invite you guys to come up here and join us, and they'll give you each a update of where they're at with their buildings and
Awesome.
entertain any questions you have, and go from there.
Good evening. Charles one. Hello. You want to start? Sure. All right, so Eric asked us 2 things, like end of the school year and then summer programming. So
Yes.
just end of the school year, Eric got to work in my building, and I got to take a minute to thank Eric and Clint and Brooke. Right, I've got some personal stuff going on. I was out of the building. We had COVID stuff going on right in those last 2 weeks. It was unreal, and I hope one of these meetings will come and we won't say that word.
That would be nice,
We keep hoping. But a lot of people stepped up to fill gaps, and Brooke McGuire actually rode in a special ed vehicle up to Jordan to support a shortage in staff. So those people that don't work in the building but work in our district and they come over and they lend a hand, it's so honorable, and they just need to be thanked for that. So, but the kids had a great end of the year. It was really a nice end of the year for the students. We were able to do our Blue Jay Way celebration on the playground. The classrooms that brought in the most cans for our can drive got to have the water fight with the teachers.
Nice.
And then Mr. Turek put on his activity day, and we had parents come this year. We didn't have parents come last year. So it just felt really super normal for the kids.
Yep.
As the adults were scrambling just a titch. And I'll have you know, our can drive, we probably brought in the least amount of cans, but aluminum was so high, it was the most money we ever got for our can drive. So, just some small fundraisers there. Big picture, right? It was great to have 3rd grade back on campus. I said that a lot during the year. And with our facilities conversation, that we were able to process pretty quickly why Central wouldn't work.
Yeah.
With having 3rd grade over here last year, and just some of the good and bad of that. And I know Eric got some of that information. So the students, it's hard to believe that the year went by as fast as it did. But as soon as we ended school, we started our summer programming the following Tuesday. So just right into that, and we had 87 kids attend. And we did not provide transportation, but if there was a gap in a kid not being able to get there, we had some I'll say COVID money because it's a lot of different acronyms with it, but we were able to get smart bus tokens and probably get 8 to 10 more kids to attend the program because we could transport them. So I think that was a better option than saying we'll provide the busing, because I know that cost it's been an aggressive cost in the past. So our summer school program went great. We had we fill out a form for each student, and we show the parents, and then we talk with the parents, not in person, but back and forth about what standards we want their kid to work on specifically. So then the teacher can be more specific with the content with that student. Ross Larson was able to get us a breakfast bag, and then we offered snack. We weren't able to work out the lunch over here this year, just with timing and space and all that stuff, but Ross was able to get us breakfast and snack, and that was great. The kids had plenty of play and social interaction, because we want to make sure they know school is still fun. And we're there 8 to noon, so we don't want 4 hours of content. And then this year we hired Brianna Lawrence as a new counselor. And so she was a para in our summer school program, connecting with kids even before next fall.
Nice.
She got her license maybe the last week or two. And then she went in. She taught social emotional. So that's the first time we've ever had our counselor in our program with our summer programming. So, and then I got a couple stories, and then I'll be done. Am I good? Just, talking about kids, I think the conversation for a while was kids, a learning loss. And I think when we started this school year, we saw, I won't say learning loss, we just saw kids that this little girl was in the second percentile in her FAST assessment. So it's like letter sounds, sight words, blending. She was second percentile. And then the test on top of that is how she reads out loud. So in January, she was at 20 words. She could read 20 words in a minute. And by the end of the school year, she was at 82.
That's awesome.
So she was on grade level, just cruising right along. So, some of those extra pieces we put into place and some of the extra staff we have, give them those little boosts to get them up. And when they get that exposure and consistently, it was pretty great to see that. Another kid was new to Hartley. He was a third grader. He was reading 16 words a minute as a third grader. The end of the year goal is 125.
Okay.
He did not get to 125, but he got all the way to 50.
Nice.
And Molly Anderson implemented a new reading intervention program called Barton. And it's just, rigorous, very research-based, science of reading. So it's great to see that growth. And then the last one, is just our third graders looking at growth and not necessarily proficiency on MCA, but when we do our FAST assessment, you can get typical growth, you can get aggressive growth, and then there's flat and modest, right? So what I did is I did aggressive and typical, and 67% of our third graders in FAST had typical growth or aggressive. So just when we get them here, we get them all the time, and there's not a lot of lingering things out there to distract our work. The kids were doing it, and it felt good. So I think those were the things I wanted to share. Questions?
It's just neat to see examples of two different growth, patterns for those
Yep.
kids. They're both awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
Kids are so individual.
And this third grader, Molly Anderson, would say maybe he didn't get the goal, but his confidence,
Oh, yeah.
his attitude towards reading,
That's
all
cool.
those things, in the relationship, she was able to build
In
with
progress.
him.
I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So-
progress is progress, so.
Nice base.
There's a question, just for my understanding, when you mentioned the boy that he got to 50 words.
Yep.
I mean, what are the next steps? Is he going to fourth grade and you are going
Yep.
to work with
Yep.
him to
Yep.
continue the program or something?
Yes.
It will be something similar in a way, or what do you think?
They have Barton as well.
Okay, okay.
Yep.
Good,
So it goes by books.
okay,
And so he'll just pick up on that next book with the staff that John has in those roles.
right, okay.
And I think our communication between the two buildings has gotten so much better that we can kind of hit the ground running with them. And we noticed it was interesting. Can I go yet, or did anyone else have any? I didn't mean to jump in.
I had
Take
one
away
quick
his
question.
Yeah.
You mentioned, the kind of the communication with parents during the summer program, and you could point to those learning target
Yep,
goals.
yep.
So it's been several years now that since we switched to that standard based and those goals. Does that definitely help, like how you target your summer programs and stuff to
Yep.
have those? Because
Yep.
you know what they missed in the school year, and you can definitely just
Yeah.
work on those in the summer.
I mean, then we have, in a first grade Kids Academy program, this gal might be teaching just the math.
Yeah.
And she's got a rote counting, she's got counting by twos, she's got money, she's got time.
Yep.
And just whatever that kid needs is what she pulls out to
Yeah.
work with them on.
That's really cool. Thank you.
And we're fortunate enough with COVID money to put ourselves in a nice situation where we don't have 20 kids
Yeah.
with one adult.
Yeah.
It's 10 to 12.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions for Ben before we move on to John?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just going to jump on those two things. Well, first off, thank you for being your superintendent Hudson and the board, and the work that you've done in the last 2 years has been amazing as far as you've had to change on the fly constantly, and so we appreciate the support that trickles all the way down to our kids, and that's the way it's supposed to work, and I think you do a fantastic job. So thank you for letting us be here and inviting us to talk a little bit about our programs. I just wanted to talk and jump off of what you just asked with learning targets, not only in the summer, but also during the year. When we have what I need time or intervention time that we can really target needs. And I think parents are starting to see it too. And so they've gotten over the fact that now they have a report card that's 3 sheets long, and started to realize, but wait a sec, before all it was reading was an A or reading was a 5. But it didn't tell me anything.
Yep.
It made me feel good as a parent, that my kid seems to be doing fine, but I didn't have any knowledge of what that meant. And I think what standards-based grading has done for us is allowed not only our staff, but also parents to understand what are the areas where their kids are struggling. And so we need to keep communicating that,
Yep.
but we feel pretty good about what we're seeing with that.
Good.
What we've seen with our assessment scores, too, is very similar to what Ben, its overall proficiency is going to be average. Or somewhere around average, but our growth, our year's growth, so you feel like we didn't quite do what we wanted to do, but then when you looked at year's growth, it was way up there. I don't know, I don't have a percentage, but I know it was well over half of our kids were making a year over in growth.
Good.
And so we felt really good about that too. And as we continue to have kids in school, which is a huge thing, and I think something that we need to keep talking about, it makes a difference to have them there consistently, because they do lose track, just like adults have lost track in this whole thing that we're dealing with. And I won't use the words on it, but we've given ourselves easy outs to doing the work, and I think the kids have taken that too. And so now when we have them consistently in school, they know they have to show up every day, they need to work, and those skills, that the executive functioning skills and the work ethic skills are coming back, and
Yep.
kids are doing it without the pleading that happened right away. And so we're feeling good about that. I feel like we had a great year at WIS. Just talking about from May on, we sent kids over to Farm America, and Farm America deserves a pat on the back for this too, as far as they did a career exploration day. And I know that I think our juniors did it, or some of our high school kids did it, but we also had an opportunity to do it with our 6th graders. And you talk about opening the eyes and connecting the dots. Kids started to see, now it had an egg focus, but it was there were a myriad of things that they could actually investigate, including extracting DNA, which I was just amazed at when I was teaching, and we were doing that with high schoolers, and now they're attempting to do it with 6th graders. And all it is the white fuzz that comes out, but still they started to put together what living organisms have in them, and that was pretty neat for the biomedical and the biology type focus. But also they had an exploration where they could go in and view lots of 2-year tech jobs, which the true worker job that's out there that sometimes gets bypassed because they don't have as heavy a presence in our high schools. But kids seeing that they could go and be an electrician or a plumber, and some of the heating and cooling, and they were actually able to actually walk in the life in kind of a virtual reality type thing that went around. And I'm hoping that comes back, because that was a connector that we've struggled to get in our upper elementary, and we just getting kids to understand that the work you're doing is leading towards something. And so hopefully we can continue to have some of that career path stuff down, even in the elementary level. So testing finished up. We had a track and field day that finally had good weather, not a lot of wind, and it was beautiful, and we haven't had that for a while. Parents were able to come and watch their kids, and I think that was a celebration that we needed, as far as having that weather connect with the date that we chose. And the kids, I think, really enjoyed it. It was really a successful day. Had band and choir concerts that were happening in May. Our DARE graduation was really well attended, and then they had an activities day where I think, is it Midwest now? The Midwest Advisory Board ran lots of activities for our 5th graders, and that was well attended, and the kids loved it. Camp Patterson went really well, and we have tons of people in our community that help, as well as our staff, to put on a good show and an outdoor learning environment for our kids. And then Eagle Bluff was the 8th through the 10th, and we had 3/4 of our 6th graders go to that. And it was just nice to be there and in a normal environment with that as well. So Eagle Bluff was a success as well. We had summer school that started, we only had around 35 kids, but what Ben said about transportation, Smart Bus really helped us out, and we've got some folks at Smart Bus that have really taken care of us and went above and beyond to get kids to our programming. And ours were about 8 or 9 kids as well. Of the 35 that we had there, we're using the Smart Bus to get there. And so that we went 12 days on that, 48 extra hours of work for kids. We break that down into 3 blocks, but this year we did so math and reading, and that would be aligned with the learning targets that we talked about. But then the third piece was something called Starbase, which is out of the cities. It's actually, I think, a charter school, but they must have received money from the state, and so then they had to share it with everyone. And so we got that last year and weren't able to implement it, but this year we did it with all of our summer school kids, and it was really a comprehensive project-based science curriculum that had multidisciplinary, so it had math and reading and writing along with the science. But we coupled that with ending the culmination. We went to the science fair, which right now they have Journey into Space, and so their project was going to Mars and becoming a scientist. How do you gather things? How do you actually do all the things that you need to do to go into space and be a scientist when you arrive? But the journey to space allowed them to actually see it, so it really connected well. That was not by design, that was just dumb luck on my part to actually know that it was there. And then ESSER dollars allowed us to actually do that, where they were really pushing do field trips, and so they paid for the whole thing.
Cool.
With those dollars, and so that allowed us to do that field trip, and that was really well received by our kids and staff. And then our extended school year, our special ed summer school, started on the 5th, and I'm sure that's going in all of our buildings right now. We have about 20 kids there. They'll go 60 hours over the month of July to get some additional learning time. And I think that's kind of what I had shared. I've got some other things written, but do you have any questions about? Yeah, it was a great year for us, and we're looking forward to getting everyone back again next year and normalcy continuing. And it's because we felt at the end of the year, and we didn't have that outbreak that Ben had, and our year felt really normal, other than struggling a little bit with attendance because of sickness during the year. But it really felt normal, and we were able to put our staff in front of kids, and our kids, I think, appreciated being there. They wouldn't admit that, all of them, but I think they appreciated that consistency of being at school. And
Nice.
so we felt good about our year.
Do you get to keep that curriculum for the program, for the science?
I can order new, and I've only used, so I have 150 kits, and I only used 35 of them, so we can re-up on that. It's based on when they created it was based on 5th grade science standards.
Yeah.
Now science standards are moving around, and so
Right.
we could use it in 5th or 6th. So I think we probably will use it in mainstream.
Okay.
But if not, then we'll just use it for summer school again. And so
Okay.
we should be able to use it on a yearly
Cool.
basis and go further with it.
Right,
And so,
definitely.
yeah. But
Nice.
is that what you were asking, Katie?
Yeah,
or-
kind of. It's
yeah.
just nice that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can borrow and, take from different programs.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's really cool.
Yes, yeah. And it was all free the first time, and I'm hoping that they're not just getting us caught.
Yeah.
We'll have to pay for it, but who knows? If not, we'll figure out something else.
Yep.
But it was really a good program.
What are you guys looking forward to with the rest of the summer? What are your initial hopes for the start of the school year? Consistency, I know that, but
The most we forget every year because we get to the end of the year and we're ready.
Yeah.
And so we say all these positive things, but everyone was ready for the break. But we also it's like starting over every year, and
Yep.
that's what I love about an education setting.
Yep.
And so everybody's new. It's our chance to make a difference in kids' life and make a good first impression on them. And so I feel like this year was harder to do that because we were starting. It was so fragile the way we started. Whereas this year the foundation's going to be pretty sturdy. We'll know exactly what we have coming. Knock on wood, but we'll know exactly what we have coming, and we'll be able to hit the ground running. And if you can get kids pointed in the right direction early, you can ride that for the entire year. And we had an exceptional year. Our 6th graders were amazing kids as far as being leaders for our building. It's probably from a behavior standpoint, and it's probably one of the best years we've had. We still have our issues here and there,
Yeah.
but they really did a nice job of just, and that's where I'm thinking part of it was they were just happy to be there. Sixth grade normally developmentally should be a pain in the rear in the second half of the year. That's what they're doing. You know, they're becoming independent. They don't want to be told everything to do or everything that they have to do. But I think we were able to buy a little extra time because of what we've dealt with the last few years. So they were amazing, and our 4th and 5th graders, we're really excited to have them back. We had a transition night, I forgot about that, where we brought our 3rd graders over and our Sacred Heart kids over in mid-May, and just let them walk around the building and start to get a feel for it, and so we're excited to welcome them to our building next year too. So, did I cover kind of what you were
Yeah, so
looking for?
you're hoping it's just a strong start will be, for a good year.
A
So,
strong start, yeah. And then just continue, we're going to get better and better and better at how we reach our learning targets.
Yeah.
And so like the more years you have pieces in place, the more modules and more things you have set up to cover different areas. And so when a kid struggles this way, you can try this way with separate modules to
Yeah.
meet counting by twos or whatever it may be. And
Yeah.
so at our age, we're past counting by two. I hope we are, but you never know.
Good example.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think too, just the normal,
Yeah.
just
Definitely.
way, right, we had some bumps this year, but it was still way, it felt normal.
Yeah.
I mean, the riffs weren't as tumultuous as they were in the past. So just a normal fall. Obviously, a couple new staff, so building those relationships, amongst the adults and that culture that we have where it's, get in, get your job done, do it well, and do it for the kids you serve and not for you.
Right.
So just setting up some of that to have a good year.
Awesome.
And one last thing, being now that you got me thinking on it, Lily, our habits of mind and our executive functioning and teaching kids how to take the steps to get the work done.
Yep.
I'm really excited about that. We'll be in our 3rd year of implementing that and getting kids to understand what those. We're trying to create more of an independent learning environment, but you can't do that without teaching kids how to do that.
Yep.
Without the teaching on this end, it's just freedom. I'm not getting in huge trouble if I don't get this done. No, but it's impacting you, and that catches up as they go through the year. And so I think as we have more time to actually, like I said, hit the ground running and teach them those skills that, no, you're not getting away with anything. The work's still going to be there. It's just we're not going to push as hard of when it's going to get done, but you're going to need to do it. And our kids are starting to figure that out. And so that's exciting for me because I think it's the #1 thing that our kids that graduate high school, going from a senior to going to college, and you mean you're not going to give me detention if I didn't do it, or you're not going to harp on me? No, you're just going to give me a bad grade, and I'm going to have to take it over and waste a bunch of money to do that. We're teaching that at a younger age, I hope, and
Good.
so where kids can learn independently, and maybe that's a different experience for your kids going through, but I know that that's a reality as we
Yeah.
go through that post-secondary.
It's
Well-
realistic consequences.
Well, and I
you know?
appreciate that. I mean, what they learn in
Different
kindergarten
choices.
it matters how they go all the way through our
Correct.
buildings, and
Yeah.
that's So
Definitely.
Which will be in another year or two to ask Jason how that impacts his
Yeah.
upcoming year.
One would
Yeah,
hope
make a
it's
note of that.
positive,
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, for sure. Any questions for us?
yeah. Any other questions or comments or? Well, we appreciate you guys giving a half
Yeah.
hour of your time on a
Yep.
beautiful Sunday or Saturday summer evening.
Well, you guys are doing it too, so thank you.
Yeah.
And if there's ever anything, and I know Eric is pretty good about sharing, but if you're hearing stuff in the public with, like, hey, they're not communicating this, or, because we're going to do beginning of the year conferences as well.
Oh,
with
yes.
Our grade levels this year, but if you're hearing things out there of, we just don't know what's going on, or the communication isn't good, please share that or get it to Eric so it gets to us, because
Yep.
we're trying to do a better job. That's definitely one of our goals for the district and our goals for the school, of communicating and making parents aware so that they have a chance to give feedback. But sometimes the feedback doesn't. It's been the quietest year I've ever had with parents calling and saying what's going on, and that makes me feel good, but then on the other hand,
Are you
there's
missing
no-
something?
Yeah.
Well, then it makes you wonder if
Hampers and
they're making it a point to find out the information. They're
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
different channels that work
Yeah.
for them. So
Yeah.
that could be.
But feedback is good for us too if you're hearing it, so.
Awesome. Awesome.
But thank you.
Cool. Well, thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so our second item on the agenda is a facilities update, once again.
Yeah, well, yes, thank you. Keeping the conversation at the table, right?
Yes.
That's kind of the idea here with this point. And Dave and Adita, through the facilities committee, some of this is repeat information for the two of them. But again, just to make sure the whole board's kind of staying on track where we are with our facilities conversation in terms of how new information comes throughout the course of the next several weeks and months. Here, as we have some decisions to make or to choose to what direction we're going to head. So as you recall, we talked with Wold about what would be some benchmark dollar values now for looking at if we were to just do an addition. We're kind of focusing primarily now on an addition at the WIS site and what that would look like for us, based on the ranges that we looked at, current pricing patterns, what they're expecting things to be. And as I mentioned last time, the pricing right now is making the architects and the contractors very nervous on how they predict a 2024-2025 pricing. But that's what their job is, so we've asked them to do that, working through with that. So Wold did engage Kraus Anderson, project manager we've worked with in the past. Again, no formal agreement or any kind of relationship right now, but just to help them with some of their pricing with pieces right now. And right now what they're coming to us with is, if we look at just basically the additions of a classroom and a gym, so adding the instructional space onto the intermediate school site with $3 million of site costs built in for parking lots, road modifications, that sort of thing. We're looking at about $28 million for that to be the entry level, basically, for the addition onto
What was that
our
again?
intermediate school. 28.
Okay.
Yep. So if you include the fact or if you consider the fact that includes $3 million in site cost, very similar to the range that we were talking about of 26 to 33 with our previous conversation with that, which is good news. Also good news that they're thinking about the site cost, because we know, as we've talked about in the past, there would have to be some design of additional parking. There has to be some traffic access out there that would have to be changed, with some ideas here on how to get around the backside of the building. The other end of that, full renovation, basically essentially doing what we did to the high school with the intermediate school site, adding K3 on there and essentially doing most of the rest of the building as an upgrade. We're looking at upper 30s, around $39 million for that, which is higher than we thought it would be. But again, that comes with, that would be, as they would call it, every bell and whistle you could think of along the way, which would be rarely how we would ever choose to move forward with that concept there. So in between those two dollar values, Wold is working with Kraus Anderson to kind of put together what I would call an a la carte array of options in between, such as, upgrading the kitchen would be $3 million. A modification of the media center, $750,000 to $1 million. Working through all those different options along the way to how much you're going to increase that learning space for students along the way. So Wold is scheduled to attend our July 21st board meeting. So that will be a report we will hear at the July 21st board meeting, is some of those additional dollar values. And I do apologize somewhat to the board, because I was hoping that these numbers would have been here sooner than they are, but as they're finding the difficulty predicting the pricing, that's just the timing that it is, how it is that way. And working with Kraus Anderson's been helpful to confirm some of the ideas. So in our last conversation with Wold, we had some conversation around timing and election timing, how we might want to move forward. And one of the things that Paul Aplikowski suggested, based on the survey, that the Morris Leatherman survey, was really we need to continue to build that narrative and that information campaign around why we'd be choosing this particular option, why would we not remodel the Hartley building, what this cost will be used for. Essentially, what Paul's comment was during our meeting was running an information campaign as if you were going out for a vote in November, but not having it on the ballot.
Yep.
To really build that narrative moving forward so that your community really understands, here's what we're asking for, here's what we need, and here's what we look at. And then essentially what that conversation came out of was we're basically on a election date by election date timeline. So we look at November election. We'd have to decide by August. Okay, got it. If we choose not to do that, the next potential date would be February. We'd have to decide that by December. And so we look forward, we almost can take it election date, deadline by deadline, in terms of what the decision would be for the board to make, that we're going to move forward. However, starting now, September, really this fall, with the information campaign to build that narrative up for the community, they would have us hear, it's what we need to do, so why we're doing what we think this is the best fit, here's how that would look. What I also received just in the last week is the final, I'll pass that around for you if you don't mind, the final write-up from Peter Leatherman, basically with his presentation and the survey feedback that I sent you before. This is essentially the narrative follow-up of everything. It's his about 13 pages, and I would refer you to page 13 to hear some of his conclusions. And I think as we talked about, solid levels of trust and financial stewardship, need to be aggressive in presenting a case of why we need to increase taxes. Some challenge on lack of public consensus. That helps us in the sense that we don't make a decision that was opposing most of the people who took the survey, but it does mean you have to build that narrative more to kind of bring your voters over who thought that one option was better than the other. It could potentially block that if you don't have a really good information campaign out there. Then he comments on number 3, just the variables in that this particular 2022 November election brings to it, given the time there piece. And then basically he's underlining the same thing that we had talked about before, which was we need to make that decision between the approaches, then engage in that longer effort to persuade the voters, support that choice, meaning that information campaign that I just referenced a few minutes ago, starting this fall, and then when we feel like we have that support, we can make that decision to move forward when we think it's appropriate. Okay. So this does not mean that a November 22 election is off the table. I'm just presenting what Wold and Leatherman have given us for feedback then in the last couple weeks, based on the timing of what we have right now. I asked Paul Aplikowski in a little bit of a side conversation. I said I thought Peter was pretty optimistic when he came and met with us, and is that just him? He said, well, no, not really. So he is pretty straightforward and factual. So these comments do reflect, I think, reality of where we are. Neither our survey, the Wold information, nothing really argues the need right now. It's just a matter of really getting that communication out in front of our community now. So I really support the idea of whether the board chooses to move this. The more I'm reading, the more I'm thinking November is relatively risky, quite risky actually for us in terms of success. However, I am feeling more confident that we need to begin the information campaign, really begin that narrative to push us over the edge, so that when we feel like we reach a future decision point, whenever that is, that we feel confident and comfortable moving forward. Right now, being a midterm election, being a gubernatorial election right now, complicates the matter somewhat. As I call my colleagues around the state and talk to Wold and talk to SiteLogic, some other of our partners, other than operating levies that really don't have a choice, we're not seeing bond votes being put on the ballot for this November. August, LaSure Henderson's one that kind of pushed it ahead. They're going to ask here in August, or then the following February or spring or even next fall, because just from the sake of being able to build that narrative, one of the things that our district is dealing with right now is an enrollment fluctuation. It's a little bit of up and down. We talked about that as we built the preliminary budget for next year. Really seeing next fall our enrollment coming in, stabilizing where it's going to be, allows us to plan accordingly and prepare going forward. So while I don't advocate personally for putting it off, for lack of a better word, I think that we can strategically target. I don't know that November is the most strategic time to target, and I think the only way to. I don't also like the idea of saying we're not going to do anything for 3 years. I like the idea of saying let's look at it at every deadline cycle, keep it on the table, and if and when that time comes, let's move forward. If it doesn't, we've talked in previous meetings that with Colin and Elizabeth and our facility staff, our LTFM plan is made as if so we don't have to do anything right now. We know we need to do something, but yeah, I said that awkwardly. Our facilities maintenance plan is built around the fluctuation of our decision.
Yeah.
Where that is, I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. So I think that's part of the reason why for me, even though the new information might be minimal, it's going to continue to be on our conversation to keep talking about it, so that once we feel comfortable moving forward, then we have that decision to be made. You'll see in my goals here when we get to our next agenda item that information campaign this fall is a highlight of one of my goals. So the board, I think, should task me with driving that this fall, in early fall, September, October, so that we have a good sense of what the community is feeling. I also feel that in good faith we've said this all along, with our community, we're not predetermining what our answer is. We really want to honor our community and what they're feeling. We know what we have to do. I don't think there's any question about that. But we want to honor our community and where they sit right now. And so to give them that honest conversation and information campaign without necessarily something being scheduled on the ballot, I think is about as good faith as it gets to say, let's talk about this. And then if and when the conversation merits it, at some point we will need to decide to make the decision to move forward. But then there isn't the pressure of trying to convince someone right now with a date set. Instead, it's let's have the conversation. Let's get people up informed. And then that makes the campaign, if you will, information campaign, much more streamlined when you actually decide when you're going to ask the question. So that's what I had to present to you this evening. These survey copies, I thought maybe you would appreciate that in hard copy to look through, as it got to be relatively lengthy, working through that process. And then Paul and Samantha are planning on coming to our July board meeting to present just support and a little bit of, if we want to add the classrooms plus modify the media center, kind of here's some options to also to basically be the expert to field your questions as well. Some of the things that they see bigger than just Waseca, and the things that Elizabeth and I can gather, there's certainly value that they bring to us in their partnership and their knowledge of what's happening in the field. And so I thought that would just be, once again, another way to put it in front of you as an opportunity to ask questions and learn more. So hopefully that was helpful. And then any questions you have right now, I can certainly help answer them as best I can.
Well, this information campaign that I agree. I think it'd be good to get the information out there. But I mean, are we going to present like this is what we could do? Are we going to choose and are the board's preferred? We want to do this option versus the other, or are we still going to present both?
No, I think at this point that's what the board would need to decide.
Okay.
I think in order to, and based on what we're hearing from Peter's conclusions, plus what we're seeing from our community, at this point, with a 50-50 split of support, the board really needs to decide.
Yeah.
And I think we need to decide this is the option, our preferred option.
Okay.
And really go with that. And I think, but as we mentioned in a previous meeting, Dave, I think it might have been you who used the words, just put it on the shelf over here. If we get into that information campaign and it's just not sticking,
Okay.
then it gives us the opportunity to revisit and say, okay, is a remodel something we need to still consider? Because it's not off the table, it's just pushed off to the side for the moment.
Okay.
But I don't think you can do a true information campaign right now based on what we're learning, because both our website survey and the caller survey was such a split,
Right.
Even split between the two options. I don't think presenting information is going to change that.
Right.
I think we need to just choose one. But if we do it before we have the ballot date set, it still gives us the opportunity to pivot should we need to. If the preferred option for now just isn't sticking.
And
Okay.
it might be helpful to start some of the listening sessions even beforehand
Correct.
to be a little
Yes.
more neutral.
Yes.
Listen to what's being said, and then we can fine tune the direction, maybe after, a couple have gone through.
Well,
Yeah.
do we hear, I mean, as a board, do you think at our July 21st meeting, we can definitively say we want to campaign on this option, on whichever option? I mean, I think it would be good to hear from Wold yet before we formally say something, but do you think we'll be ready, hopefully by the July meeting, to say, let's go out and campaign on this, whichever one? I felt at our last session where we talked about facilities, a lot of us were feeling stronger towards the K-6 building option, with the idea of maybe keeping a renovation on the shelf or in the back pocket if that ends up being the right choice. But
Or are we talking about the dates when we want to
no,
start doing it?
no, just which
Plan?
yeah, which
I
plan?
think-
I think the plan
So
almost.
I think right now, what I'm hearing is, yes, continue to move forward with planning, providing information and information campaign on the potential K-6 option. That's what I took out of our previous session.
Yeah.
I think the July 21st scheduled time with Wold was at the time, if the board does feel strongly this November is when it's going to be, then they're here with us to say, okay, let's dig in and go to work. If not, it's just an additional information session. We don't really decide to vote on anything.
Right.
Other than, yes, the district, with our support as the board and what your role will be in that, we'll communicate that to provide that information campaign on this being the best option.
Right.
And then I think at that point, we have the opportunity to look at, okay, if we're not going to go in November, what's our next decision deadline? Okay,
Yes.
it would be December for a February election. So we don't have to decide anything until December. So now we provide the information campaign, we move forward, then we decide, hey, has something stuck? Are we going to ask this question or are we not? Okay, what's the next decision deadline? Work on it that way. That's kind of my thought process of how the next steps evolve. So we don't have a and I know it's a consistent, but the word isn't thorn, but a consistent topic that doesn't go away.
Yep.
But that's kind of where I want it right now, because
Yep.
it's not, it doesn't go away. It has to be something we have to continue to be thinking about. So when we feel ready, we're ready.
Well, because part of this information campaign is also why we feel now it's better.
Yeah.
We can't keep pushing this off years down the road. That's part of that campaign.
I think the reality of the urgency is what that is part of the message that delivers.
Yep.
Or I guess that's delivered. I think if we were to say, because quite honestly, it might be several years before we ask the question. We don't know that at this very moment. But if we just put it away for 2 more years, I think we've just probably confused the urgency of the issue.
Yeah.
And right now, it is urgent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's
And we know it's urgent, and so we have to keep talking about it. Doesn't mean we can make a decision that won't work,
Right.
but it means we need to keep the urgency in front of us.
Yep, and
That's-
we hear the questions and we can answer them
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
get the right information out to people.
Yeah.
Not just
And quite
speculation.
frankly, sorry, go
And we
ahead.
have to be straightforward that delaying that there's no benefit in delaying that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So
The other thing I was going to say is, you had said, are we ready to commit in maybe the July meeting of what direction we want to go?
that's kind of what I'm
Not a
wondering.
solid commit.
Yes.
But the alternative question would be to not commit and to say, we want to keep waiting. Is there advantage to do that? There might not be advantages. It might just make us not put off that willingness, but we gotta,
Yeah.
we're
I mean,
here
'cause,
to
yeah,
answer those hard questions.
I'm okay pushing off the date for going out for referendum, but I would like the board to commit to, we want to pursue this option, whichever, and I know which option I want to pursue, but and we've talked around the table a little bit, but I don't know if we want to formally say, yes, we want to go with the direction, or, so I guess that's kind of what I've
Then we can be a
Yeah.
unified front. This is the direction.
yeah, so,
This is the option first.
Well, and I think and I think Charlie, I think you asked the question when Peter was here about, do we know how many who said, I prefer the remodel, are persuadable or would just say no to the other option? And Peter was able to give us some insight, but the short answer is not 100%, not completely. We don't know.
yeah.
And so by sharing information about one option, which from what my conversations, I would say that the K-6 option is the option to continue to explore at this time,
Yep.
based on what I'm hearing from board members overall, not committing to a time,
Yep.
but committing to exploration. Then we find out how many people who said, the remodel is my option, would be on board with this one or not.
Yeah.
Do that process. They don't, either or doesn't, kind of just splits us again.
Yep. It's all about communication.
Mhm.
Yes, and yeah, I agree.
A little bit unrelated question. Is it typical for the school district just get one estimate from one builder?
Well, no. When we go out for bids, we will get multiple bids. Right now, from an architect or an architectural consultant to give us the general range. Yes, it is pretty common to work with who you're working with for that process to get us the general range. But we will get multiple bids when the project actually goes to, because they're basing it on market value. But to that point, to increase Wold's confidence, that's part of why they reached out to Kraus Anderson, so they wouldn't be alone in their thinking on that. Yeah.
Because I think we got
Good question.
three bids originally, 3 or 4 companies that we had talked to.
Yeah. Yeah, once we pass a referendum, then we formally would choose an architect. We would formally choose, so Wold is consulting with us, but they're not necessarily we have options. We're not, yeah.
Correct.
So,
Is it Kraus Anderson to help us at least get ballpark numbers to
Yeah.
make the decision, but not to commit to? That's
yes,
exactly.
yeah.
Right.
Because we'll go out for a bond and be like, and we'll pick a dollar amount that's in the range that we think we can get the project completed in, so.
Correct, yeah, you would never want to go for a vote and then find out that it costs $5 million more.
Right.
Or preferably, you would not want it to cost $5 million less either, because then you've misled the communities somewhat.
Yeah. All right, well, I mean, I personally would like an actual vote on, yes, we're going to go with whatever option, so we'll probably put that on the agenda
Very good.
for the next meeting, and then whether or not we can be formal about it, I guess, but yeah, we're not talking about the bond yet, we're just talking about our option, so, or our preferred.
And it commits us.
Yes, so, even if it's just to like approve your information campaign.
Yeah, that's fine,
So,
that's fine.
Yeah, all right. Okay, well, so then segues right nicely into our next agenda item, the superintendent goals. Why don't you
Sure.
share those with us? and-
Yes, I'll pass this, this document around. This will look very familiar to you. Updated to the, forgive the typo on the very first goal. It should say 22-23, not 21-22, but the rest of them look to be without dates, so that's okay.
Yes.
So, first goal, I would propose we continue to work with the vision cards to increase student achievement, including measuring outcome for student progress. One of the things that the feedback from this evaluation process for me was that it can be a little bit, if this is going to be a goal, it's a little tricky with the results not coming in until late summer. Did you meet that goal? Did you not? And so I would propose that I will create the next year's vision cards with some clear benchmark measures along the way, so that we're able to more successfully measure my progress in this goal and the district's progress on that goal in the desired timeline of evaluation. Because really, when we do that is the appropriate time for superintendent evaluation. So that's the right time.
Okay.
And then I would propose a measure to continue that progress of 4 of the 6 areas now as comparative to this year.
Yep.
So now here at the August work session, the plan is to present to you the 21-22 results. Now, based on how that becomes the new baseline to some that we then create 22-23 from, and continue with that progress with that piece. And 4 of 6 just feels like it's more than half for me. We want to be setting goals that if we get to vision in every single goal for a year, that's not good either.
Yeah.
Because then our bar's not set high enough.
Yep.
And so I'm not interested in just getting all visions just for the sake of a look at how great we are. We want to show progress and true growth.
Yeah.
And so I think progress, or sometimes not making the goal, is more beneficial than just meeting every single goal, because then you didn't set your bar high enough. This is kind of the approach I would take with those vision cards. Goal 2, the community engagement goal, continues. With that, I think extremely important, obviously coming up in this next year. As John and Ben were speaking about their excitement for the next year, one of the things that I feel most strongly about, that I'm excited about the next school year, is that we've had this summer break, and now we really can get back into the excitement of getting back to school. Both principals talked about the normalcy of the end of the school year and kind of how the school year went, but we really didn't have a lot of opportunity to appreciate and reset ourselves for that, because we still were connected to September, October, November, that last year were so challenging and tenuous. And so to have that break and come back, working forward with that. So the first two, A and B, really maintains the goals from the last year. Community engagement activities, partnerships, reaching out to communication with the community. But one thing I have done, just so as not to have a litany of goals here, is I essentially took our facilities goal that was a goal on its own the last year and moved that up to part C of this community engagement piece, because really it comes down to working with the school board and facilities committee on the next steps for planning and measure of performance for their designing, implementing an information campaign in the fall of 22 to prepare the community for a potential facility question as part of that. So I felt like that facilities ongoing piece rolled well into community engagement for this next year.
Definitely.
Thought about it that way. The other three were relatively similar from the previous pieces in terms of updates and regularly community engagement and stakeholder sessions and things like that. Goal 3, one thing that, based on our trajectory of our budget and our fund balance, I felt like this was a beneficial goal just to put back on the forefront for the superintendent. We're in positive place for fund balance. We're within our policy. We're in a healthy spot. But I don't think there's any deniability that this next year is going to create some hard decisions that we have to make sure that we continue to stay stable in our budget. Enrollment pieces being what it is, the funding being what it is, our staffing levels being the most of our budget, we're going to have to make some decisions here in the next year to be able to do that. So I would like to put that back on as a goal to create a healthy fund balance. And then one thing similar to what I did, I think my first year here, kind of preparing that multi-year budget plan. I know we presented that 2 years ago here about this time, or after my first year, about here's what our next plan is about that stair stepping and right sizing, which we're in the process of now, and then time to update that based on current reality after a few years have happened there. It's an uncertain time, but I think we want to make sure that we're stable in that regard too, particularly if we're going to ask our community to support us additionally, to really have our ducks in a row of what we're doing in the long term is another we need to do that to build trust and stay in the transparent conversation with our community for that. And then the doctoral program continues to work through with that. I'm excited to be finishing up actually next week with summer semester with that. So I've been continuing with my Wednesday nights throughout the summer, which has been and actually as part of my internship teaching a class. So I'm taking a class and I'm teaching a class this summer, which is kind of a really fun way to kind of meet in the middle a little bit.
Stay even more busy.
And yeah, it is. And ethics of leadership, which is kind of a fun, a really fun topic to think through with graduate students.
Yeah.
As they think through what their experience is compared to how real life will confront them with those issues as that works. But then I'm thinking next, some of the feedback on my evaluation and my comments from last month was really wanting to hear more about what's happening in that program and how does that bring value to the district, and how does that bring added opportunities for our staff or for our students. And so I think quarterly progress reports seem like a really positive way to present that to the board, to help inform you all of what's happening and what's really impacting the district, because I cannot honestly say that it is impacting my leadership positively, and it is impacting our district positively. To have a superintendent that has had the opportunity to obtain that credential and bring those experiences to us is of value, but you're going to want to see them. And so that's what I think is positive for that fourth goal. And it continues to really enhance the theme that I've worked with all of our leaders, is that there's the operational goals, the work we're going to do. student achievement, the community engagement. But then there's also how are you growing as a professional? Because if we stop growing and think we know it all, then we're out of luck in a hurry. And so I think setting that as a goal can be one of the hardest things for a leader to do, but important for a leader to do. And how are you going to grow? I'll just quote a conversation with one of our administrators I had around their goals this year, and it was about, well, I want to do this particular, get this committee to go into committee to produce this product. Okay, that's great, and that's really good. We need to do that. So what do you need to do and learn as a leader to be able to make that happen? Just make it happen, or do you need to learn or grow or do something different? And that's where we went with the goal for that individual. And so I think it's the same way here for myself. So I think these goals continue the work we've been doing. They're staying along the lines of our strategic plan really well, and particularly based on the feedback I've received from the board, the last goal progress reports. And I think it sets us up for a nice next school year. So my purpose of bringing them here tonight is to get your feedback and thoughts, and then we'll formally approve them at our July meeting, if that's agreeable to the board.
Yep.
I like the combining of the facility with the community engagement, because
Yep.
I think our big need of facilities is community engagement, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think the operational plan, we've kind of gotten down that road a little bit, so now the step is getting out there and
Yeah.
talking about it.
No, these are good. I like this, how you rearranged them and then added the budget back into there, because it's good timing
Yeah.
for the path we're going.
Yeah, and I recognize, yeah, you did have this on your first year, but I think it's prudent to do it again. So I think that's good. And I like the idea of the quarterly progress reports, and because you've shared it with us in the superintendent evaluation committee what you've been doing, but it's good for the whole board to kind of get some of that stuff too. So, yeah.
In our feedback, there was a, request that, how when you are engaged with the businesses and the community, how it helps to our district. What is, the outcome? I mean, are you thinking the measure number 3 would be
Yes.
that?
Yeah.
The performance 3 on the second one too, of include updates on community engagement in your regular updates. They always say we pay attention to what we're measuring. So for you to have to measure that all the time will make you keep thinking of that, make us keep thinking about that as a constant. That's an important thing.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that's good.
And with it being connected to the weekly board update, I was thinking, and Adita, thanks for that reminder, that does allow us to apply it more to what's happening in the district and talk more about that. Yeah, not just going for coffee to get to meet new friends.
Well, I appreciate that we have this tradition or this expectation of your weekly updates, and that you can use those to help measure or hold your goals accountable and measure your goals. And it's cool that we've I really look forward to them every week, but I like how you've brought them more into your goals for the year as well. So, all right, any other feedback? Good. All right. We are also going to talk about board goals and measure our own performance on last year. I only got feedback from Grant, thank you, but I just got it today, and I only gave you guys like a week to do it. So, did we want to push that off until August and spend part of our August workshop evaluating ourselves and also setting goals for the? And we could probably also do our 3-year agenda at that same time. I would
We can,
think.
and the timing will actually work out well, because we will hear some of the all the vision card results
Yeah.
for 21, 22. So when you think about what you want to focus on as the board for the next year and how your work supports the vision card and strategic plan process, the timing will work out well.
Yeah,
actually.
I think it's okay just to push that off until our August workshop, and I'll send that out again, and then I can also include just a reminder of the 3-year agenda and yeah, stuff like that. So, but I was thinking about our board goals today, and honestly, I went through our strategic plan, and I was kind of underlining and highlighting things that I'm like, have we done this? Yes. Should we keep working? What are we missing still? And just thinking ahead to it's time for the next strategic plan pretty soon also. So possibly some of our goals for this next year might be like have we accomplished what we wanted to accomplish, or what do we want to continue that work on in the next plan and stuff too. So
Yeah, it kind of gives us back to, and I can reshare, or it's in the board up folder, I think, if you'd like it, to look at it, a 3-year operational plan of the
Yeah.
learning work, the implementation work, and the standard work, and what has become standard.
yes,
And there's a lot of that strategic plan that now has become standard.
Yes.
And so at that point, we don't need to necessarily set it on our goal sheet any longer, because it's just what we do.
yes,
You know, and what new things we're learning about that has to come in and replace that.
Yes.
And the vision cards, as well as the 3-year board agenda, help drive your goals to say, here's what we've accomplished, here's what we need to do more of.
Yep.
Because we don't want to keep as much as it feels good, just if we've done it already, we can take it off our goals.
Yes.
We don't need to keep celebrating it over and over and over again. So it's just what we do. It's what we do, right? And there's several things like that were there.
Yeah.
We hear about Ben talk about his culture of his building and why we're here and what we do, and I see that every day when I'm talking to staff and kids, and that's, he doesn't necessarily need to work on that. He needs to continue to foster it,
right,
but doesn't need to change that. So he's thinking about, how do I get new staff involved? How do I continue with that? So same thing with that piece, because everything we do is a constant.
yes,
As people turn over, how do we stay with what our standard work? And we have processes for that.
Yeah.
So, very good.
but yeah, so I encourage everyone to think about what we did this last year towards our goals, and what we can do next year towards our goals. And I did want to point out, one of our goals was creating the new board member packet, and we are going to work on that at our next superintendent evaluation committee meeting. So yes, so it is not finished yet, but it is. Eric and I have talked about it several times. We just haven't had a chance to bring in more people, but yes, the goal was to get it done. Yes, before elections, and then talk with any potential candidates and hand them that packet even before an election, so they can be, so that they're fully prepared for what they're getting into.
What are they asking for?
We didn't.
Right? Yes. That would have been helpful, right? So, only other thing to highlight is the negotiation committee did meet with Eric today to talk about his next contract, so we'll have highlights of that, and that'll be on the agenda at our next meeting as well. But if you have questions before that, please feel free to ask anyone from the committee about that. But and I just wanted to give you guys a heads up on that for the next meeting. Other than that, I don't. Oh, next week is the fair. So Caitlin would like people to sign up for Saturday. So if you can look at maybe share that again one more time. Yeah, and so if you're able to fill a shift, that would be great. And then our next board meeting will be Thursday, July 21st, 2022.
Very
And
good.
that's it.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.